The seeds of jealousy. Betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it sits across from you at family dinners, smiles with your face, and calls you sister. My name is Hannah Mitchell, and if you asked anyone who knew us growing up, they'd tell you my sister Clara and I were inseparable. She was 2 years younger, bold where I was careful, funny where I was serious. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. But love, I've learned, doesn't always look like loyalty. And family doesn't always mean safe. We grew up in a small town in Oregon, raised by parents who believed competition made people stronger. They didn't mean harm, it was just their way. If I got good grades, they'd ask Clara why she didn't. If she got attention at a party, they'd joke that I should learn to relax. Those little comparisons built a quiet wall between us. I ignored it for years, believing we'd outgrow it. We didn't. When I met Ethan, the man who would become my husband, that invisible wall started to crack open, and what poured through shocked me. Ethan and I met during graduate school. He was calm, gentle, the kind of person who didn't need to prove himself. Where others saw competition, he saw collaboration. He didn't just listen, he understood. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. Seen. Clara liked him instantly. Too instantly. At first, it was harmless teasing, little jokes about stealing him if I ever get tired of him. We'd laugh it off. I'd roll my eyes. But the tone started to shift. When Ethan and I got engaged, Clara was the first person I called. Her silence on the phone was long, too long. Then she said, "Wow, you sure move fast." It was the first crack in something I hadn't realized was fragile. Sometimes, jealousy doesn't arrive like thunder. It starts as a drizzle. A slow erosion of trust you don't notice until it's almost gone. In the months leading up to our wedding, Clara's behavior became unpredictable. She offered to help with planning, but every suggestion came with an undertone of criticism. The flowers are too simple. Ethan's suit looks cheap. Your hairstyle doesn't flatter your face. I brushed it off, telling myself she was stressed, lonely, maybe insecure. But then came the night everything changed. A week before our wedding, Ethan showed me a string of text messages from Clara. Flirty. Provocative. Bordering on desperate. You deserve someone who gets you. Hannah's not as confident as she seems. If you ever need to talk, you know where to find me. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting. My sister, my own blood, was trying to undermine my relationship. Ethan had never replied. Not once. He showed me the messages the moment they came. I didn't know what to do, he said quietly. I thought maybe you'd want to handle it privately. I remember sitting there, numb, the world spinning around me. I wanted to scream. Cry. Confront her. But beneath the anger, something deeper rose. Heartbreak. Because she didn't just want to take my fiancé. She wanted to take the one thing I thought we shared, love. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you'd die for, subscribe. Because sometimes, the people closest to us teach us what love really means. By showing us what it isn't. That night, I called her. She answered like nothing was wrong. Hey, sis. How's the wedding chaos? I could barely speak. Why, Clara? She went quiet. Then she laughed, a small, bitter sound. Why not, she said. You always get everything. The grades, the friends, the perfect guy. Maybe it's time you see what it feels like to lose. It was the coldest thing anyone had ever said to me. I hung up without another word. The next few days were a blur. Ethan stood by me, patient and understanding. We didn't invite Clara to the wedding, a decision that broke my parents' hearts but saved mine. Still, even as I walked down the aisle, a part of me grieved. I wasn't just losing a sister. I was burying the illusion of who I thought she was. But grief has a strange way of preparing us. For truth, for transformation, for the kind of forgiveness that doesn't come easy. Because years later, when Clara's own world started to crumble, mine would be the only hand left willing to help her stand again. She tried to destroy my marriage. But love, real love, doesn't break that easily. It just waits until the storm passes. When the fallout began. When trust breaks, it doesn't shatter in a single sound. It cracks and echoes, through family whispers, through silent dinners, through all the moments that were supposed to feel safe. After the wedding, I thought the worst was behind us. I wanted to believe that walking away from Clara would bring peace. But betrayal has a long echo, and mine followed me home. It started with my parents. They couldn't understand why Clara hadn't been at the ceremony. When I told them about the messages she'd sent to Ethan, my mother's face drained of color. My father just sat in silence, staring at the floor. "She wouldn't do that," Mom whispered. "Not Clara." But she did. And for the first time, I saw something I'd never admitted before. My parents didn't want to see Clara's faults, because it meant acknowledging their part in creating them. Years of comparison had taught Clara that love was something to win, not something to give. When love is raised on competition, somebody always ends up bleeding, even if the wound isn't visible. Months passed. Ethan and I settled into married life, or tried to. But some nights, I caught myself staring at my phone, wondering if Clara would ever call. Sometimes, anger turns into longing before you realize it. Not longing for the person who hurt you, but for the version of them you thought existed before they did. Then, one night, I got that call. Her voice was shaky, soft, not the confident tone I remembered. "Hannah. I need to talk to you." Every part of me tensed. "Clara, what do you want?" "I messed up." "I know. But I think I'm pregnant." For a moment, everything stopped. I sat there, cold, gripping the phone like it could anchor me. She told me she'd been seeing someone, an older man from work. Married. When his wife found out, he'd cut all ties. She'd lost her job. She was scared, broke, and completely alone. I wanted to hang up. Every instinct screamed, "This isn't your problem anymore." But another part of me, the part that still remembered tucking her into bed when she was 5, couldn't. So I took a breath and said, "Okay. I'll come over." Sometimes love isn't about what someone deserves. It's about who you refuse to become while dealing with them. When I walked into her apartment that night, it hit me. She looked nothing like the girl who'd once sneered, "You always get everything." Her eyes were swollen, her hands trembling as she poured water into mismatched cups. She tried to speak, but the words broke halfway through. And for the first time in years, I saw my sister, not my rival. I sat beside her. We didn't talk for a while. Then she whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not ready for this." "You'll figure it out," I said quietly. "But you're not doing it alone." She looked at me like she couldn't believe it. "After everything I did to you?" I nodded slowly. "That's exactly why." Her lip trembled. "You should hate me." "I did," I admitted. "But hating you didn't fix anything. It just kept me angry." If you've ever had to love someone who didn't deserve it, subscribe. Because sometimes grace isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing you'll ever give. I helped her get into a support program for single mothers. Ethan, ever patient, stood by me, though I could see how much it pained him. He never once said, "I told you not to get involved." He just listened, held me, and said, "You're doing the right thing." And that, more than anything, reminded me why our marriage had survived what Clara tried to break. Because it wasn't built on pride. It was built on partnership. Months passed. Clara's pregnancy progressed. She started therapy, found a part-time job at a local daycare, and even began to smile again, a real one this time. Our parents, humbled and quiet, began to visit her too. They never apologized directly, not for the years of comparison, not for how they turned us into opponents, but they showed up. And sometimes, showing up is enough. When her son was born, she named him Eli, a name that meant renewed. She asked if I'd be his godmother. I hesitated for a long time before answering. Then, finally, I said, yes. But this time, Clara, no lies. No pretending. Just truth. She nodded, eyes brimming. Just truth. Forgiveness doesn't rewrite the past. It just stops it from deciding your future. The test that meant everything. Sometimes the hardest test of love isn't a betrayal, it's what you do when the person who betrayed you needs you most. The months after Eli was born felt like slow stitches being sewn into a frayed cloth. Clara showed up every week for parenting classes, she volunteered at the daycare, she did the paperwork, the W-2s, the therapy appointments. She learned to change diapers and to sing lullabies without letting her voice crack. She learned to ask for help and to keep showing up to the hard things she'd once run from. But recovery, even honest recovery, isn't linear. It has cliff edges. It has nights when you think the ground under your feet might give way. The first cliff came 6 months after Eli's birth. Clara called me at midnight, breathless and terrified. The father, the man who'd left her and the child in the wreckage, had shown up at her job. He was drunk, angry, and threatening to take Eli away. He said he had rights. He said he'd make her look crazy. He said he'd ruin her. I don't know what to do, she whispered. I'm so scared, Hannah. Something in me clenched, a cold, protective thing that used to make me move without thinking. I had 100 reasons to say no, the months of messages, the undermining that had nearly cost my marriage, the way she'd once tried to seduce Ethan, the long ledger of hurt. But when I heard her voice that night, small and raw, those reasons felt thin compared to the small, crying life she'd pulled into the world. Tell me where you are, I said. Don't leave. I'm coming. There's a point where standing on principle becomes cruelty. There's another point where rescuing becomes enabling. Love is choosing which point you're at, and acting with courage. I called Ethan on the way to her job. He didn't ask if I was sure. He asked, do you want me to come? And when I said yes, he was there in 10 minutes, his face set like granite. We made our way to the cafe where she worked. He stayed in the car. I went in. The man had left, thankfully, but the staff were shaken. Clara was pale, eyes rimmed in red, holding Eli close like he was a lighthouse. When I hugged her, she sobbed into my shoulder and said things I'd never heard from her before, not excuses, not justifications, but fear and shame. I thought if I looked perfect I could hide the mess, she said. I thought if I owned it all, no one would want to look behind the curtain. I know, I said. But hiding hurts people. Facing it saves them. She clung to me like she might never let go. I wanted to hold her forever. At the same time, I kept thinking of the small rules we'd set: truth, accountability, no lies. This was not a moment to erase consequences with kindness. It was a moment to use kindness as a tool for protection. I offered to drive her and Eli to a friend's house for the night, somewhere safe. She accepted. On the way, the city lights blurred into lines of silver and gold. Ethan texted me, 2 little blue hearts and a message: call me when you get home. Promises lived in those small, consistent things. In the days that followed, Clara's ex escalated. He threatened an anonymous social smear, hinted at exposing secrets, hinted at legal action if she refused to hand over the child for visitation. He tried calling hospitals, employers, the daycare. He showed up at the door of her friend's apartment once, pounding on the intercom. I could have snapped. I could have called his bluff and dragged him to the mat publicly. But the fight that would satisfy the part of me that remembered being undermined would also escalate the danger to Eli and to Clara. That wasn't the point. The point was safety. So we built a different strategy. We documented every threat. We recorded harassment, saved texts and voicemails, and we called a legal aid clinic that worked pro bono with low-income parents and domestic violence survivors. The lawyers were blunt and excellent. If he escalated to violence, they would file emergency protective orders. If he tried to take the child without legal standing, the police would be notified immediately. We prepared, legally and practically, for every contingency. We also set up a small community of allies, co-workers, the daycare director, a neighbor who'd become quietly protective, people who would say if something looked off. If you're watching and someone you love is in real danger, subscribe for more stories, and take a moment to find local resources that can help. Safety matters more than pride. Meanwhile, Clara kept showing up to therapy. Slowly, painfully, the patterns she'd used to hide, lies, braggadocio, attention-seeking, started to feel less like armor and more like chains that cut her. She began to tell the truth about the affair, about the manipulation, about how shame had made her act in ways she hated. Sometimes she broke down. Sometimes she apologized and then recoiled from my forgiveness. But she kept trying. One afternoon, the ex was arrested for public intoxication with a prior domestic complaint on file. The police pulled the file and discovered the pattern. He was subject to a restraining order. The relief in Clara's shoulders felt like a tide receding. "Thank you," she whispered to me that night in my kitchen, both of us exhausted, both of us raw. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You won't be alone again," I told her. "But you need to keep doing the work. For Eli. For yourself." That sentence, "you won't be alone again," would be the one that stitched us. It wasn't an erasure of the past. It was a contract for the present. I would help, but on terms that honored my life, my marriage, and my peace. That balance mattered more than any grand gesture of forgiveness. Ethan watched this all unfold and, in the quietest ways, was my partner. He met me at legal appointments, he sat with Clara when the panic attacks came, and he changed a diaper once when I was late from work and felt the world tilt back into place. I don't think he or I ever expected to find the marriage tested, tenderness-hardened kind of love we had now. But it existed, in phone calls at midnight and in him offering to take time off to sit with my sister while I caught up on sleep. True love supports without suffocating. It protects without punishing. It's patient when people break, and wise enough to teach them to rebuild. The hardest test came 10 months after the birth, the day Clara flinched, an old defense reflex, and took Eli in the middle of the night to an unknown address. She'd panicked at a rumor on social media, convinced this man would find his way to her. I woke up to frantic voicemails and texts. My heart dropped into a place that felt like glass. I called Ethan, then called the friends and the neighbor network. A search began. Hours passed like a slow river. Then a call from a volunteer at the shelter. They'd taken in a woman and a child matching the description. I drove out there with Ethan, my hands shaking, every scenario cycling through my head. Inside, Clara sat with Eli in a donated blanket, eyes hollow but alive. She looked at me and then apologized without the old theatricality. "I thought I'd lose him," she said. "I thought if I didn't move, I'd be trapped forever." "You're not trapped," I said, and meant it. "But running without a plan won't save you. It will only make others afraid for you." The shelter director hugged us both, and somehow the moment felt like a crossing. When we finally got home that night, exhausted and relieved, the three of us, Ethan, Clara, and I, made a small, solemn pact. Clara would continue therapy and parenting classes. She would check in, regularly. She would let the legal team handle threats, not take matters into her own hands. And we would, as a family, build scaffolding to hold her steady. It wasn't a cinematic reconciliation. There were no courtroom speeches, no grand music swell. There was, instead, the quiet sound of a world learning to hold itself together. And in that quiet, in the documents filed, in the diapers changed, in the midnight calls, I learned what real love looked like: steadfast, courageous, demanding, and forgiving in measured doses. She tried to destroy my marriage. I didn't let her. But when life left her nowhere to hide, I showed her another way, not a way back into my past, but a way forward, with the people she'd hurt, and the life she needed to keep. What real love looks like. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without reliving. And loving without losing yourself again. The years that followed didn't unfold like a movie redemption arc. No grand apologies, no magical reunions. Instead, they came quietly, one ordinary day at a time. 3 years after Eli was born, Clara had built a new life. She was working full-time at the daycare that had once given her part-time hours out of pity. Now she ran the place, organized, steady, the one other parents trusted when they had nowhere else to turn. She paid her bills, kept her small apartment tidy, and even went back to school for early childhood education. Every report card she got, she'd send me a picture of it, a minus. Progress. With a string of emojis. And every time, I'd smile. Not because of the grades. Because for the first time, she wasn't performing. She was growing. Sometimes redemption isn't a loud apology. It's a quiet consistency that lasts. Our relationship settled into something that felt fragile but true. Cautious laughter over dinner, shared pictures of Eli, small moments of honesty that replaced the years of manipulation. One afternoon, she came over while Ethan was in the kitchen fixing coffee. She looked nervous, like she'd been rehearsing something. Then she said softly, "Can I say something I should have said a long time ago?" I nodded. She took a deep breath. "I tried to take from you because I thought love was a prize. I thought if I could ruin what you had, maybe I'd feel better about what I didn't. But you didn't fight me, you just lived better. And that made me see what I actually wanted." Her eyes shimmered. "What you and Ethan have, that's real. I didn't ruin it because I couldn't. It was stronger than I ever understood." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Then I said, "Clara, the only reason I could forgive you is because Ethan showed me what love really looks like, patience that doesn't turn into pride." She smiled faintly. "You chose well." That night, after she left, I told Ethan what she'd said. He didn't gloat or say, "I told you so." He just smiled, handed me a cup of tea, and said, "Looks like she finally saw you for who you really are." He always had a way of grounding the biggest emotions with the simplest truths. If you've ever believed kindness makes you weak, subscribe. Because love that forgives but still holds boundaries is the strongest kind there is. 5 years passed. Clara and I rebuilt what had once been ashes. She met someone new, kind, grounded, humble, a single father whose quiet humor reminded me of Ethan. When they got engaged, she asked me to be her maid of honor. I almost cried on the spot. The wedding wasn't grand or fancy. It was held at a botanical garden, intimate and serene, filled with people who knew both her scars and her strength. When she walked down the aisle with Eli holding her hand, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. After the ceremony, she hugged me tight. "Thank you for showing me what real love looks like," she whispered. And I whispered back, "You found it yourself. I just stood by long enough for you to see it." Forgiveness doesn't erase pain. It transforms it, into lessons, into boundaries, into stories we can tell without shaking. A year later, when Ethan and I hosted a small family barbecue, I watched our parents sitting in the yard, older, quieter, humbled by the years that had reshaped their daughters. Dad watched Eli chase fireflies and said quietly, "You girls turned out all right." Mom just smiled through tears and whispered, "Better than all right." And I realized, maybe love had always been there in our family, buried under generations of pride and misunderstanding. It had just taken time, honesty, and failure to unearth it. That night, after everyone had gone home, Ethan and I sat on the porch, the world around us soft and silver under moonlight. He took my hand and said, "Do you ever think about how different things could have been if you'd chosen anger instead of grace?" I looked out over the dark yard, the echoes of laughter still lingering in the air. "Every day," I said. "And every day, I'm grateful I didn't." She once tried to destroy my marriage. I could have let that break me, but I didn't. I showed her what real love looks like. Forgiveness with boundaries, compassion without surrender. In the end, that love didn't just save my marriage. It saved my sister, too. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Every week, we share real stories of heartbreak, healing, and redemption. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be.